Hi, listeners. This is Leanne Boas. I'm a handwriting analyst, and I've been doing this for 33 years or so. And me and my husband, Nick Boas, are here, and we have an interesting show for you today. It's only going to be about half an hour. We started a few minutes late, just a few technical challenges. This is something new for both of us, and we might be changing the format in the near future. But I thought I would cover my expertise using the radio. You cannot see the samples unless you go to a particular website portal I've set up, which is called InkBlinksRadio.com. So if you want to open up a new browser while you're in Periscope and go look at the samples, I will describe them on the radio here so you can get an idea of what I'm referring to. But when you see the samples, it's even easier for you to discern details that I'm talking about. But I just wanted to give you an example. Okay. First of all, I wanted to talk. First of all, Happy New Year, everybody. I can't believe it. We're in 2019. Isn't that fabulous? I think it's great. I'm really excited to be doing this. I think you're going to find this very entertaining, but also very informative. You're going to find out things about friends, family, your boyfriend or girlfriend, your partner, your children, even yourself, especially yourself, because what I wanted to cover with the 6 fear traits today, and there are many others besides 6, but these are the main ones that sort of self-sabotage us, get us stuck in really not so happy situations in our professional lives, in our personal lives, in our love relationships, our romantic lives, or lack of a romantic life, as the case may be. So I thought, what I would like to do is serve you. I would like to help you so that you can know more and become aware about what subconsciously might be driving you underneath the surface. In your conscious mind, for instance, you might be saying, I really want to meet that guy, and I really want to get involved in a nice love relationship that becomes committed, or the woman. It doesn't matter. Handwriting analysis works for both men and women. There's no gender bias. It also works for people from all different backgrounds around the world. It's not something that's just specific to the United States, which I'm broadcasting from right now. And it's also the kind of field where I can't tell you what age you are unless you tell me in your handwriting sample. And I do have a website called InkBlinks.com, and I will post that up afterwards. But we have this running, and then I'll have an archive on InkBlinksRadio.com where you can watch the whole program and listen, and you can see a little bit more and hear a little bit more after the session. And then after we hit like 20 minutes or so, if you have any questions and you would like to text a message on the Periscope, you could do that. And it would be really fun because I can answer your question pretty immediately. And it'll make for a little bit of a dialogue. So I have 6 fear traits. And the first one I'm going to start out with is the D's and the T's, the lowercase D's and T's. When someone handwrites a lowercase d where there's a loop in the D, that always means somebody's very sensitive to criticism, especially about their personal life decisions. And if they do that with a T, you know how when the T bar crosses, and if it's a large loop on the T, that means a person's really sensitive about their work performance or their ideologies being questioned. So in the workplace, it can be a real disaster if you have a boss who does this, or if you do this and you're very sensitive to criticism and your boss is trying to give you constructive feedback, but you're not listening to the constructive aspect of it. You're getting defensive and your back's getting up. So that's just one example of a fear, the fear of not being right, the fear of people questioning your authority, the fear of people questioning your personal life decisions when it involves a lowercase d. So when they go up on the upward vertical stem of the D, normally it would be written so that it's just straight up and down. But a lot of people are sensitive to criticism these days. I see that more than any other trait. So it's common. It's not like, you're Jack the Ripper or anything like that. It's showing that you're hypervigilant about making sure people approve of you. And so when you're operating from that point of view, I think you're taking away your power. You're not recognizing your own power because you're always playing to what other people might have to say about you or what they might think about you. And as a result, you're not feeling quite as authentic inside. So you have an internal confusion, if you will, or sort of a restriction, like you're just always holding back the truth of what you believe authentically because you're trying to fit in society and with friends and with your family and with your workplace. So it's a really hard dance to play all the time. And so it can hold you back because you're not in your confidence. You're not saying confidently and with self-assuredness, I am who I am, and this is who I am, and I'm not going to worry about what people think about me in terms of criticism. So I think that's a big issue in our society these days. Don't you think so, Nick?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's something that shows up. Sometimes it's temporary. Sometimes it just shows up like once in a while. And I noticed many years ago, we worked at a college in Boston, and many years ago when I was working at this college, there were politics of like any college. It was pretty crazy. And there was a time where the leadership was changing. So a president was going out and a new president was going to be selected by the board of trustees and faculty and people on the campus. And I noticed in my boss's handwriting, who was very high up at that time, that his loops on his D's and his T's got wider and wider. So it's almost like he got more and more paranoid about people criticizing him because he was up for potentially being the next president. And there was so many politics attached to that, so that in his subconscious mind, he was sort of repressing all of those emotions, but it was coming out in his handwriting. I was seeing that the loop on the T and the crossbar on the T, the loop was much wider. If it's more narrow and tall, a loop, that indicates pride, and it also indicates an individual who's still sensitive to criticism because they have that pride in their work product and work service. And that was part of what my former boss was like as well. He was very prideful of his work quality, and he was very much a perfectionist. So perfectionists tend to do this more than any other group that I've seen in my personality analyses. I do individual readings. So if you want me to do a reading of your handwriting, you can always email me. You can email me at inkblinks@gmail.com and send me the sample. And if I'm still on air, I'll certainly do a live, quick little synopsis for you if you want. I do full 15-minute and 30-minute readings through the inkblinks.com website, which will be all in the archive, so don't worry about that. The links will be there. But I will say it's very interesting. It's usually the perfectionist, the person who's very self-conscious about doing a great job, who does those loops. So please don't take that as being a seriously bad kind of fear trait, but it is a fear trait that can hold you back. And my goal for this program is to make you feel more confident, make you feel more aware of, what's sabotaging you. Why aren't you getting that promotion? Why aren't you getting that guy or girl to turn their heads and look at you and pay attention to you? What is it besides, the obvious reasons? Is there something subconscious below the conscious mind level that's sabotaging you and you don't even know it? And it usually comes from belief systems created from the time we were children, and we don't even remember how it originally happened. Maybe your brother or sister got a popsicle that you didn't get, and next thing you know, you have a little bit of a need to gain approval from your parent in order so that you'll get the popsicle the next time. There's all kinds of things that get sort of submerged into our mind. And it comes out 40 years later when you're in the workplace and you're in the boardroom and somebody else is getting recognition for work that maybe you did, and you're so sensitive to that, it triggers an emotional response so that you get a little defensive. All right. Excuse me, a little bit of a cough there. Did I not cover anything, Nick?
No, you're fine. No one's come into the room yet, so.
Yeah, I think everybody's watching football or something.
So
is there a football game today?
So which one are you on so far?
Okay, so
you've been.
There's another T-bar that I wanted to point out too, which shows lack of purpose, and you can go to the InkBlinksRadio.com to view it. But when you have a lack of purpose in your career, you don't feel it's meaningful, you tend to make a bow. It's like a little bowl as the bar. So it's not straight across, in other words. And that simply means that you feel a lack of meaning, a lack of purpose for your career. And I do career advice using this discipline. It's really fun, and I can see where your talents are and your gifts, so I could help you a lot if you want to send me an email. I can show you what kinds of careers would be better for you than others. Some people are outgoing, some people are more introverted, some people are much more interested in working in the outdoors or with their hands. You can see all of this in handwriting analysis. It's really fantastic. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show you is handwriting analysis is great for dating. You know, it's a really fascinating discipline where you can see whether people are compatible or not. For instance, I have a few samples. The Y's, the J's, and the G's, and the Z's all have loops on the bottom. And sometimes people don't make loops. And that has a meaning as well. So there's a whole bunch of individual traits in handwriting analysis that gives you a clue as to how a person is going to be romantically. And it shows you if a person's going to be more sexually driven, if they're going to be more romantic, if they're going to be more loyal to just one or two people, one person at a time, in other words, or if they're very cliquey and they socially don't want to get involved and they're very timid. You can see a lot about the dating style of a person. You can see if they're confident. You can see if they're arrogant. You can also see if the person is lacking in self-esteem, and that's why they don't know why they're not getting the dates, but they don't feel a sense of self-worth. It shows in certain letter forms and certain ways of handwriting. So when someone makes, I don't know if you ever saw somebody who makes a Y or a J where it just goes down as a straight line, and sometimes it goes as a short straight line. Sometimes it goes down as a long straight line, and sometimes it has a little hook at the end. There's all different kinds of meanings, but when someone does a straight line on, let's say it's a Y, and it looks like a stick, it just goes straight down and there's no loop, that indicates a person that's not going to really, they're fearful of getting involved in a partnership. That's usually the case. They like their independence. Maybe they've been burned a few times, or maybe they just like their own company and they like going out in nature walks, or they like going to the museums on their own, and they don't want to be defining themselves in partnership. They just want to be involved in a very, it doesn't mean that they don't want to have a relationship at all. But it means that they don't want to have somebody clinging on them. They don't want to commit to marriage right away. Or if ever, maybe they got burnt in a previous marriage and that's why they're doing that. It's in the subconscious zone. We have several zones in handwriting analysis, and I know that's a technical term that I'm using right there. But basically what you need to know is the downward stroke of that stick-like formation going down from the Y. You make the scoop at the top and you go down straight and you end and you don't come back up with a loop. That means an individual is going to be very independent. You're going to value your personal time. Your personal space is really critical to you. If you're a college student, you're living in a dorm with 3 other people in a room, a large room, that happens. And you do that, you're going to have a really hard time because you're not going to want to deal with having 3 other people in the same room. A lot of us don't want that. But at that age group, there's more openness to different ways of being and living. And it's exciting. You're enjoying friendship and parties and learning new things in your college classes. So it's really an exciting time of your life. But if you're an independent kind of person who's very quiet, reserved, maybe you like to read or do artwork or do something private, it's going to be a really hard environment for you to adjust to. So you might want to consider, living off campus or nearby, renting a room in a house nearby the campus, having your own space, or commuting from your home where you have your own room. There's so many different options, but I'm just saying or just sort of planning on going to a lounge or a library or something on campus where you can get away. That's an example. I'm just giving an example. There's so many examples for that. But it is a fear of, people sort of intruding on your freedom when someone does that with the Y's, J's, and Z's, where it's just a straight line going downward. And if the line is longer than it is normally, like it's like a couple inches or an inch and a half, that means that you're very determined and you're going to follow through on everything that you commit to do, and you're very, very independent and very successful people do that. So it's not a serious negative thing, but it's just an awareness, especially if you're in the dating arena and you're looking for that partner and you do this or your potential partner does this. Be aware. They're not going to be quick to say, second date, you're not going to start talking about marriage. Just know it. Okay. Nick, do you have anything else to add?
No. What number are we on here?
I'm on the third
one.
Okay. There's an M. The M's and the N's are the thinking letters, and they're really important in handwriting analysis. It shows how you process information, how you think, literally, whether you're more careful and cautious or if you're more analytical, if you're a person who's going to be more dramatic, if you write larger M's, or if you're going to be a little bit more scientific in your approach to things, if you write really tiny but very clear. There's all different definitions. I studied this for many years, and so it doesn't all come in a few days, but I'm just giving you a glimpse, folks. I'm not obviously doing a training session here, but I'm just giving you an explanation, a description, if you will. Now, if you haven't gone to InkBlinksRadio.com and you can't see the M, what the M looks like, how you have the 2 peaks on the M and you have the inverted V in the middle. The inverted V in the middle means the deeper it is, the more analytical, more investigative you are. And then the second hump on the M, if it's higher than the first hump on the M, and by that I mean it looks like a mountain, you know what I'm saying? If the second one is higher, that means you're very sensitive and fearful of being publicly ridiculed. And so that can really work against you if you're working in a corporate environment or a workplace where you have to give presentations, get up in front of a group. You could be very, very nervous. It could really set you back in terms of getting in front of a board of trustees of a bank or a financial or, any other kind of business whereby you have to be very professional and very confident, but you feel that fear, that internal fear of ridicule, which again probably comes back from your childhood. In the first 7-8 years of life, they say the most development occurs. Michael Jackson, the singer, who's since years ago passed away, he did this with his M. So if you want to go on the internet, Google Michael Jackson's handwriting. Maybe I'll put it in as a link, but it definitely shows that even though Michael Jackson was like the most wonderful singer in the world, practically, I mean, he started a whole new genre. He was fabulous on his feet. I mean, let's face it, he was really fantastic as a performer, but he always had that significant fear, that tragic, terror-filled fear of ridicule, public ridicule especially. So it must have been very painful for him, and that could explain maybe some of his insomnia, his inability to sleep. He wasn't functioning well in his personal life. He was brought to court, as some of you may know, and, that kind of stuff, being out there as a famous person, must have been horrible for him. So it showed in his handwriting. It showed that he had that terrible fear, and that was blocking him. It was blocking him personally, I think, not professionally, because he did overcome a lot. But it definitely shows, if you're working with him or someone else who does that, you got to be careful about how you give them criticism, because they're going to be the back will be up. Okay. The next thing I wanted to show is a Y that's downturned. When a Y downturns in the loop, just before it gets to what we call the baseline, which is the bottom of the scoop that you make when you begin making the Y, when it goes downward in a little scoop downward in a circle, like concave movement, that always indicates a downheartedness, that you sort of have this fear of success. And it's a bizarre kind of concept, because most of us would say, no, I'm not afraid of success. But if you do this with your Y, your J, or your Z, for instance, or your G, that indicates that you are subconsciously fearful of success. And you might be fearful of success because it means you're going to be demanded to do more, you're going to have to travel more, you have to be away from your family or your loved ones, you can't do as much socially. There are downsides to being successful, or you won't know if friends really like you for yourself or for your money that you're accumulating. So the fear of success is a real issue. It's a real concern. And so if you're doing that, what you're going to do is you're going to sabotage yourself. You're going to get to that point. Have any of you ever known somebody where or maybe it's you, where you get to the point where you're working, let's say you're working for a large organization, and there's that one person that's very talented, and they do great work, and they're running around and they're getting everything done. But then at the last possible minute, everything sort of falls apart and unravels right before their eyes. That's a person that might have a fear of success. And the subconscious mind is causing them to behave in ways where they're going to sabotage that, so that they won't have to spend extra hours at night away from their family in the workplace, if they got that partnership in the law firm, for instance, or whatever. So it's really a fascinating subconscious mind kind of issue that can sabotage you and can really block you from achieving your dreams and goals. Now, we're at 23 minutes now, and I have one more sample. I don't know. I don't think there's anybody listening at this point.
No one came in.
Aww.
But maybe there'll be people that come in on the review.
Yeah.
On the rewatch. But go ahead. You finish
okay.
that, and then we'll talk about your site.
I'm going to finish the last one, and that's a T, the stubborn T. If someone's particularly stubborn, they will make a T where it's braced. It looks like an inverted V, actually, or two sides of a triangle going up, and then you have the T-bar crossing. So it's the kind of movement of the pen that shows that the person is braced in what they believe, and they're not going to listen to other points of view as easily as someone who doesn't do that. So in other words, they're quite stubborn. And stubbornness is really a fear of not being right. It's obstinacy. It's feeling like you have to be right, and if you're not right, everything sort of isn't going to work for you or is going to fall apart. I think we all know someone who's stubborn in our lives, some more than others. But in the workplace, that plays significantly, because stubbornness can make an individual feel very self-righteous sometimes. And when you get into an environment where you have to work with a team, and let's say you're working with a team that are all different locations around the world or in a particular country, and you don't really know the people that well, then you're not going to know what you're bucking up against, because you're presenting let's say you're the employee and you're presenting a person the information, but they just don't seem receptive and responsive to the data that you've just shown them. It could be that they've got one of these stubborn T's where it's braced at the bottom. And the wider the brace at the bottom, the more stubborn the person is. And they are not going to budge. You know how you say the stubborn bull? Well, they're going to hold their ground. And sometimes that works for them. Sometimes that's not a bad thing, because they need to make their stand, and maybe they're very intelligent, and there's other aspects in their handwriting that shows a tremendous personality and with tremendous gifts. But more often than not, when someone's so vested in their own opinion, it's hard for them to make decisions that are going to be good for the general common good, and they're going to focus more on themselves. Okay, so I've covered the 6 traits, and it's all on InkBlinksRadio.com. So, Nick,
right. No one came in, but maybe you'll get people that listen to this, and then they might have questions that might email you.
Yeah. It's wonderful being able to broadcast like this. Excuse me. All right. Well, to talk a little bit about me, I've been doing this for, like I said earlier, 33 years. And I have several websites. To see more about all my services and about the fundraising events I do online and other activities like parties for women's gatherings, readings, mini readings for all kinds of groups that get together, you will find that I can really share a lot of detail about a personality based on their handwriting. So what's coming up is Valentine's Day. So I thought my next show would be about dating and a Valentine's special, helping people see, if they're compatible with others and what the love relationships would look like if they were to get together, not just on a sexual level, but on a personality kind of level in terms of what's your emotional responsiveness and what's theirs. And it doesn't matter if it's heterosexual relationship or same-sex relationship. Like I said, handwriting analysis is gender neutral. So I thought it would be really fun to invite people to send me emails, and I'll basically set up the format on the internet on InkBlinksRadio.com. And we can do a few samples free online. And then for those that want a more in-depth reading, I can have you go to InkBlinks.com, and you could get more of your personalized reading there. Okay, I think I've covered just about everything. There are other fear traits, like I said, in handwriting analysis, and I would say 15 or 20 of them. But these are like the main ones that I wanted to show you that really trip people up. And they're such simple things, but it's the awareness that helps you to realize with yourself and others that are around you when a person is acting out of fear. And it might even help you be aware to the point where you might sort of stay away from a person that's hyper vigilant about being criticized, so that you don't have to deal with the toxic reaction that they might give. Or if it's your boss, for instance, I could be helping you with your career because you know not to criticize your boss. Even if your boss is asking you for your input, just be selective about what you're giving back as input if they have a large loop and their lowercase t's or their d's, especially the d's, because the d's is more personal. The t's are more work-related sensitivity to criticism. And it's really a great skill And I think you would have a lot of fun learning more about this. I plan to have more podcasts and radio shows on Periscope, so this isn't the only one I'm going to do. And I'd love for feedback from you as to if there's a certain topic you think you'd like to know more about related to handwriting analysis. And I also wanted to say thank you for listening and Happy New Year. I hope everything is going great in your life. And if you need help and need assistance, I have a counseling background. It's on my website, but I'm not a clinical counselor. And so if you really need help, always go to a professional like a physician or a counselor that's a social worker or psychiatrist, psychologist. So this is a way to get an assessment, to get an awareness that you could even bring to your counselor for that matter, or your physician, and get support that you need. But it's another tool that you can use to improve your life. And that's my goal for you, is to help you get out of that stuckness and to find a more uplifting, happy, and fulfilling life in 2019. Thank you for listening, everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.